So this week I'm working on this site. We're building just a big outbuilding basically, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a detailed video on how we're constructing it and the different methods we're using and just how to go about it, because this is the simplest but best, most effective way if you're going to build a really solid, long-lasting outbuilding on your own property. This is the method that I would suggest using. So today we're on site and we're building a large, very large in fact, outside structure. It's going to be a timber frame building, and I had nothing to do with the concrete slab, but as you can see there's quite a substantial concrete pad that we're working off, and it's at least 6 inches thick. I'm going to suggest possibly a little bit thicker than that, but that was done by other people. But it's nice and flat, nice and level, and nice and square, which is important. Once you've got that concrete slab, and as you can see we've got some plastic underneath which is going to stop rising damp to a degree. There's going to be some moisture penetration, or weather exposure rather, through the side here, but we're going to stop the rising damp coming up through the ground. And then what we're doing is we're just basically building what we would call a sole plate. It's the same that you would use for timber frame houses, and it's 150 millimeter high brickwork, which is basically 2 courses of brickwork. It's going to be a single skin construction, and I'll show you the rest of the construction as we go. At the moment we're just doing the brickwork. We've got 2 courses of brickwork going all the way around, and then the timber frame going on top of that. Now, if I was building a substantial external building on our property, this is definitely exactly the type of construction I would use. So I will be keeping you up with what we're doing. It's day 1 here today. We've just started laying the brickwork, so I'll keep you up with what we're doing, how it works, and how to build it, and how to do it all watertight and what have you. So we are just finishing at the end of day 1, and we've got our brickwork up 2 courses, and we're going to just tidy it up a little bit before we go. And as you can see, it goes all the way around, all 4 sides, and we've built some of our frames ready to go on in the morning. So first thing tomorrow we'll be filling these holes in the top of the bricks. Now these are semi-engineering bricks, so they're going to be quite comfortable with a little bit of exposure to the weather, and they're going to be just really durable hard-wearing bricks. But because of the nature of them, when we put our timber on top of here and we try and fix down through, obviously we don't want to be hitting all these holes, and if we try and go into the brick like this, then it's going to shatter. So before we go, last thing we do today is we're going to actually fill all these holes with mortar and allow that to go off, so that when we come to drill our holes and fix down through, it's a nice solid piece of masonry that we're fixing into. The other thing that we're going to do is when we fill these holes, we're also going to put a very thin layer of mortar across the top and put a DPC, a damp proof course, through, which is basically a piece of plastic. It's a 100 mil or 115 mil or 4-inch wide piece of plastic that comes on a roll, and what that's going to do is it's going to stop any moisture that gets into these bricks where they're exposed to the elements from penetrating up into our timber and effectively rotting it. So it's going to just help with the longevity of the building. So that's the next phase, and I'll be showing you that next. Okay, so this is the very start of day 3. So we've done 2 days here so far, and obviously I've not been on my own. There's been a team of 4 of us, so it's gone a little bit quicker than if I was on my own. But as you can see, we've got our 2 courses of brickwork off of our main concrete pad here, 2 courses of brickwork. Then we've got a very small mortar joint, a course of damp proof, we call it DPC, which is just short for damp proof course, which is the width of the brickwork. Then another mortar joint, then our timber work. Now our timber work is just frames. Now we've just built these to size, ready to lift straight on. When you're doing that, the easiest way, in my experience, is to use just a really, really simple prop. So a piece of timber like this with, it's got a little screw on the end that just hooks over the top of the frame, so that you can put it in place and then use that to hold it roughly level. Now there's a few things to know about building the frames. So depending on what you're going to use to clad them, you're going to need to think a little bit carefully about how far apart they are. So on the inside here we've got ply boards. So we're going to ply out the inside. Now, it depends on what your use is going to be. If this is just going to be a shed, then I wouldn't normally worry about the inside ply boards. But because this is actually going to be used as some temporary housing while another house is built, so we're making this insulated and even more watertight than a normal shed would be. But a lot of the procedures that we're using here, though, are ones that I'm going to translate to what I would say would be the best way to build a permanent structure in your garden. So I'll tell you what the differences are and which ones I would and wouldn't employ depending on your use. But if you're building a workshop or any kind of permanent structure and you're able, then this is the method I would use. So we've set these out at the correct distance so that a sheet of ply will end half on one of these, and then the next sheet of ply will butt up to it, and we can fix both sheets of ply to the same timber. So spend a bit of time setting out. Now, it depends on where you live in the world as to what those distances will be. So that's our framework, and then obviously once we've got our corners up and braced together, then it's going to be quite strong. And then we've got these diagonal braces, so we've put a spirit level up the side and we've kind of heaved it and made sure that it's really nice and level, and then we fix these diagonal braces, which are temporary. They'll come off when all the other supports are in place that will brace it diagonally instead. So that's where we are today. Next job is going to be building the gables. We've got a pitched roof here, so we've got gables to put on each end, and then we're going to run some purlins through. I'll explain all that as we go, but that's basically the roof structure. And then to make the walls watertight, we're going to be using a breathable felt membrane. Tyvek is a brand name, but if you look it up, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Tyvek. So we're going to be using Tyvek or an equivalent along the outside here. And again, I'll show you all that as we do it. The last thing to mention, and this is a great tip. Now, the clients here where we're working, they had a lot of doors and windows lying around from who knows what. And that's what we're using here, UPVC. Now, you can always find online on sites like FreeCycle and Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, you can always find used UPVC windows because people replace them and they've got to pay to get rid of the old ones, and you can get them for free. You can also do that by speaking to a local window or door manufacturer, UPVC company, because they've got to pay to get rid of the old ones. They're more than happy usually for you to take them off their hands. So we've got a load to cut into these walls, and they're all going to be reclaimed UPVC doors and windows, so they effectively cost nothing. So that is definitely a tip that I would use regardless of what structure you're building, even a shed. So not only are you going to save money by doing that, but you're also going to get a really decent, even second-hand ones, compared to a regular shed build. They're going to be a really decent quality set of doors and windows. So that's where we are at the end of day 2, beginning of day 3, and I will speak to you again when we're a bit further on. So we're back, and it is the beginning of day 4 today. We had a lot of rain yesterday. We've set up this gazebo, so we've got somewhere we can put our power tools and have our chargers and everything, and also run for cover when we got our serious downpours. As a result, we didn't get as much done yesterday as we might have otherwise, but here we are nonetheless. So all of our internal walls are now up, our frameworks, our skeletons, and the doors are set out and the openings. We fitted not all because we've got 4 more windows coming. We didn't have enough windows to finish, but we've got all of our second-hand windows put in place. So you can see what we've done here. It's really easy. If you are doing this, you just cut out top and bottom so that it fits in and allow for a beam across either side. Here's the bottom of your window, including the sill. Obviously you cut any timbers that are in the way, and you just cut a little bit extra to allow this cross beam to come in, and you fit the top and bottom beams first, because then you can put your side beams in up against the window. So that's all of our windows fitted, all the windows that we have here. Today we're going to start construction on the roof. Now obviously at all points you want to be checking for level, but when you start building the roof construction, it's really important that you make sure that everything is level and upright. So all your corners need to be braced diagonally, or whatever you need to do to make it level, because you're not going to be able to do it after this, because once you've got these diagonal rafters on and things like that, it's going to brace the building and you're not going to be able to move it anymore. We've got a ridge beam running through the middle, and we're going to be putting that on today and cutting our rafters. Now, what I suggest you do if you're going to build a building like this and you're going to build rafters is you just get one as a template. So I've offered that up. How I work that out, I know what my pitch is, I know what my rise is from the plate height. We call it plate height, which is the top of your walls, where your walls meet your roof. So I know what my distance from plate to ridge is. So what I've done is I've just measured that same distance up off the ground, and that's allowed me to run a timber where the rafter would sit, and I've got exactly the same pitch. And then I've used a spirit level to cut that angle at the top, and I've rested it over here and cut what's called a bird's mouth. I'll show you what that is. I might have to just climb this ladder a second. So as you can see here, we've cut what's called a bird's mouth on this timber, which is this piece cut out here so it sits over the roof plate. Now, these plates are going to be doubled up. So we're going to run around the whole building and put another 4x2 along all of this just to help shore it up, because it's going to be supporting the weight of the roof and what have you. So you'll notice I'm not quite at the top of the ridge, but when that extra plate is on and this is lifted, that's all going to work nicely. You should never cut more than a third of your timber out. That's a rule of thumb for your bird's mouth. But that allows it to sit snug, and it means that as you work down through the roof, if you've got this snug, you know that everything's in the right place and it's not going to move. So we'll have one person just on using these now as templates. Before we cut any more, we'll take these, make sure they work at the other end, and then we're going to know our building's all correct right the way through, and then we'll cut. I think it's about 60 we need, something like that. So we'll have someone on templates just cutting all 60 of them while someone else comes through and puts the ridge on. Now we're also going to have what's called purlins that go up underneath in between this run, because it's quite a large run. So we've got purlins going underneath. Purlins are just more supports that are going to run down. Now, because we've got the two end walls, obviously, but we've also got 3 walls along the building, we're going to be able to support our purlins on that. Now, if you were making more of a barn type area, then you might want to go for more of a truss type construction, where, because we're not having ceilings in here, it's going to be vaulted ceilings right up to the roof. But you might need to get some really long timbers to go across and then build like self-supporting trusses. But if you can have your roof supported along its length, then it's going to reduce dramatically the size of the timbers that you're going to need. Now, there's something in the UK called the Trada tables. That's Trada. You can find them online. You'll have to do a bit of digging. Or you can also Google a term, span tables, SPAN tables. And the results that you get from searching those terms are going to tell you exactly what size timber you're going to need for what size span for both rafters and purlins, and it's going to give you that information based on the pitch of your roof and also what type of roofing material you're using. Now, these tables are compiled for house builders, so they're not designed for a roof as light as this one. So we are able to make a few calculations, so I can adjust whatever we need based on the exact construction that we're doing here. But basically what I've done is I've just been able to reduce the size of the timbers slightly versus the ones recommended on the Trada tables, because the Trada tables don't allow for just a regular shed roof, flat roof, which is what we're using here. We're using a felt, just a bituminous felt. So there we go. That's end of day 3, start of day 4. And I'll speak to you after about another day's progress, by which point I would like to think that the roof skeleton will be pretty much complete.